So about 3 months before Back to Future Part 2 came out, Michael J. Fox was in Casualties of War. It was a lukewarm response. I think a lot of people had a Vietnam War film fatigue.
It's strange to have a fatigue from Vietnam War films, but yeah, I agree.
And the subject matter is something that's not really all that,
Yeah, even as far as Vietnam War films go, like the big difference, and I don't want to say that any Vietnam War film glorifies or celebrates the war. That's not what I'm meaning by this, but they at least celebrate the people that put it all in, like the people, the good people that we sent over there to do a job. Whereas this film, it's not very, it's not very celebratory of the people because we're really like watching a horrible event unfold, a true story.
So yes, we're going to talk about Brian De Palma's Casualties of War, and it's actually a pretty good film, but just kind of a lukewarm response.
Yeah. This time, Kyle and Nick on Film, we're going to finish off our De Palma month with Casualties of War. Welcome back to Kyle and Nick on Film. Today we're talking Casualties of War, the film that actually Quentin Tarantino, famous director, one I really enjoy, said it's the greatest film about Vietnam as in the war there ever made.
Which is kind of a massive critique because we got Platoon won Best Picture in 1986, and this movie came
like there's so many of them. This one is never at the top of the list.
No, and I think it's hard to. And this is another rewatch, and I'm hesitant to rewatch it because it deals with a lot of tough subjects to digest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not an easy watch. The film is phenomenal, but it in no way is something where you're like, gosh, I'm looking for something feel good,
Right. And it comes out in August, like right at the end of summer, and then a lot of anticipation of this movie. A lot of reviews for it were kind of lukewarm. I know Cisco and Ebert were kind of about it. And I understand why after rewatching it. It is a major movie, but it underwhelms you at certain times.
Yeah, and you look at it from the point of view of Michael J. Fox headlining the film, known mostly for comedy, and I would even throw Back to the Future, relatively comedic. He's looking for somebody to kind of actually he needed a break from comedy, which I think he got one here. There's not a single moment of levity in the entire film really, except for maybe a few at the opening moments.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Michael J. Fox being in this movie. And he noted that when the film was released, that he saw a big 2-page ad in the local paper, and on the front side of that ad was a big full-page "Honey, I Shrunk the Kids." You'll laugh until you puke. The feel-good movie of the year. Like everyone was just putting that down. And on the other side of that was this Casualties of War. The picture of him and Sean Penn, and it said the movie will change you forever. You'll never see a war film like this one. Even Steven Spielberg said after watching an early cut of the film, this will stay with you. You'll be thinking about it for weeks. And I think that's absolutely true. That's why people don't revisit it often.
So it's actually based on real events. The story was chronicled in the New Yorker in 1966, based on a true story. A film actually was made in 1969 and premiered at the Berlin Film Festival. I believe his name was Michael Verhoeven, and he titled the movie "Okay." Mm-hmm. It was so shattering, it shut down the film festival because judges were harsh. At that film festival, Brian De Palma submitted a movie called Dionysus, so he's aware of the content, and he wanted to make an American version of this. So ever since 1969, this has been stirring in Brian De Palma's brain of wanting to do it. In fact, he came close in 1979 of doing this, and after you do Untouchables and you win a bunch of Academy Awards, you pretty much can do whatever you want next, right?
Yeah, it's fair that this film closes coming in right after we talk about the Untouchables to be able to talk about this because, this movie would not exist if the Untouchables was not a success. He was kind of on the outs with Hollywood before the Untouchables. He was looking for a commercial hit to really get himself back in because he hadn't had one in a while. And then this film, unfortunately, didn't get the kind of love it deserves. So again, he found himself on the outs a little bit more and kind of trying to get back in. It's actually the third the third version of this story. Because Okay, as you'd mentioned, there's also a film called The Visitors, I believe. I was unable to find either of these films. It sounds like Okay is almost impossible to come across now. Even De Palma himself said he's never been able to actually find a copy.
After he shut down the film festival,
So it's going to be the most well-known one just because I couldn't find another copy of it. For those of you who don't know the film, because I actually didn't know about this story before seeing this the first time. there was an incident back during Vietnam involving a fictionalized version of events. I should point out these characters don't have the same names as the actual people. But we follow Erickson, played by Michael J. Fox, who his squad decides to put themselves in a horrible situation by kidnapping a civilian Vietnamese girl, taking her and commit horrible atrocities on her. And he is kind of the odd man out, like trying to figure out, how do I maneuver through this situation and do the right thing? And I think that's an incredibly difficult thing to do when you're surrounded by men that are supposed to be your brothers. And
especially when all of them outrank you.
They all have weapons, and there seems to be a cracking of the morality at play here. So it's really tough kind of for him to maneuver through this.
So in the story, they have features of a lot of events. They go into combat and they get a release, and then they want to get out of the base. They want to go into town, and they are forbidden. It seems like the Viet Cong are sniping people in the city, so they want to keep Americans away. Mm-hmm. Well, they interpret it as disgruntled, right? Mm-hmm. We get a break. Let's go to town and have fun, and they can't do that.
Yeah.
So
the VC needs time with the prostitutes too, is what they hear. So
that's what they're building up in their mind. So there's this constant build up that that's not going to turn out right. The other thing I think about is centralized in the whole movie is Sean Penn's performance. Mm-hmm. I think it's one of his best, and it seems authentic.
Yeah, I was reading that he kind of, and most people around him on set, he avoided Michael J. Fox on set, which I totally get, because you want to kind of build that divide. And he played the character as if he was the hero of the story, which is an incredibly difficult thing to do when he's doing the things that this guy is doing in the film. But he played it as though it was that he was like the captain of the football league, and like that he had done so many, like, you know, he was supposed to have this great life coming out of high school.
It does play out.
And then he gets put in a situation where his moral degradation takes place with the loss of a friend, and that just breakdown that happens, the societal breakdown that even happens outside the country.
So you have a lot of, Sean Penn has a lot of explosive scenes that he's very famous for. Mm-hmm. And, how he is on set, he's very famous for. And I think, but this actually is effective because it very convinces you that, yes, this guy can go off. But it's the same kind of person that you want when you go into combat as well.
Yeah.
You feel that security when you go into combat with somebody like him. But when things go quiet, that's somebody you don't want to be around.
And the way that he kind of brings other people in, John Leguizamo's character joins up with them at one point, and he is on the opposite side. He is with Michael J. Fox as Erickson for a good portion at the beginning, and then he is slowly worn down to like, well, the one of us mentality almost brings him kind of into the fray where he kind of turns on Michael J. Fox. And I think there's a sign to Sean Penn's performance. Like I said, him playing it as heroically as he can makes him a villain that, similar almost like Joaquin Phoenix's Joker, where like you understand what he's doing and it's not right. No. But like you can see the tragedy of the character even though you don't agree with his actions.
Yes.
And that's kind of played out with even just like him like having fun with the situation, which is incredibly unnerving. It's those moments where you're like, I shouldn't be watching this. Like that moment when they're picking the girl, and he's like, I think he says she's the prettiest one, and he goes, well, pick the pretty one. Like it's a really unnerving and disturbing moment, even though it's just a line of dialogue.
So yeah, there's a lot of like mechanisms with Sean Penn's character that a lot of things agitate him. There's there's something that will always set him off, whether he interprets something to be stupid, whether there's a line. So there's constantly this anxiety in him. He cannot ever relax. No kidding. When you're in war and you're away from and you want to leave. The other thing is Ving Rhames is in this. I completely forgot Ving Rhames
that too, and I was looking at him. I was like, that's not him. Like
right, because he looks very
un-Rhames-ish.
Rhames-ish. He doesn't look like very like a he seems approachable, right? He seems genuine. He doesn't seem standoffish.
He's introduced so warm,
right? Yeah.
He's got a big smile on his face, and to the point where I was like, that's not him. And I had to look him up, even though it looks like him. It is him, but it's just so different than any other Ving Rhames performance, especially what he's known for today.
And then a year later, he would be People Under the Stairs.
Yeah, very different character there too.
So a lot of things were going against this movie because of the content, the story. Brian De Palma, works very scope. It's filmed in Thailand, but most of the people were actually at the time were looking forward to Back to the Future Part 2. They weren't wanting to see a movie with Michael J. Fox in this of a war movie.
Mm-hmm.
They're anticipating Back to the Future Part 2 is coming out, and a lot of I think it didn't make its money back. It a lot of responses. It didn't stay in movie theaters very long, and that's just kind of where you submit the movie, right, at the timing. So a lot of the timing went wrong, and it's kind of underwhelming at moments as well.
It's like when we talked about The Eyes of Laura Mars a couple weeks back, where it was just like the wrong placement of the movie.
Yeah.
Like in the case of Laura Mars, I did not enjoy that movie as much as as much as I think Casualties of War is a great film.
Yeah.
I didn't enjoy The Eyes of Laura Mars, but like I think the film could have made more money if it was released in a more opportunistic time. This one, coming on the herbs of like, we know there's going to be a Back to the Future 2 and a Back to the Future 3, and they're going to be so much fun, and we can't wait.
And we're waiting for 4 years for it, right?
Yeah.
It's been a long time waiting for 4 years.
Although I would say this film would have done worse if it had come out between 2 and 3. I think, like it just kind of missed that time period where it just wasn't going to have a good drop no matter which way you did it.
Yeah.
But I do think putting Mike Fox, and that's what we friends call him, Mike Fox, putting him in the film as the lead, as Erickson, is a really strong thing in that he is a very connective character for the audience.
Yeah.
Like, because not only are we going to agree with him morally,
it's a right cast,
but like he is, he's the kid next door. He's Marty. Like we connect with him before we even see the credits roll on the film. And to have him placed in this film, I think it's one of his best acting performances because we have to see everything going on through him, and he is our visual medium. During the first horrific, rape scene. We don't, thank goodness they don't show that. They cut to Michael J. Fox instead, and it's more horrifying because you watch it through his eyes. You see how he reacts to it, and it's a haunting moment.
The other thing is I think it doesn't really go very well. It's not impressively edited. I don't think it's bad edited, but there's some things, there's a long drag-out scene of him marching with a guy, giving a lot of exposition to the story that could have been cut more. And then, so there's a lot of, I don't think the editing is effective as much as it was like in Untouchables.
Yeah, I think
even though the whole same crew came back.
Yeah, Bill Pankow, who had done the Untouchables, had been a part of like a lot of De Palma's work. I just don't think he put the pieces together as snug as he did with a film like The Untouchables.
And it's not a harsh criticism of the editor. The editor has to work with what he gets, right? So,
yeah, he doesn't get to order everyone back out to shoot scenes, especially if they're not like on a set,
So I just want to make sure if I'm critiquing editing, it's not so much just the editor. The editor has to work with what he has, but also,
But this is a film like, it almost feels like it's using the bones of Full Metal Jacket. And the Full Metal Jacket had 2 halves of a movie.
Yeah,
this one's got a little bit more than 2. Like we have the sequences early on, just seeing them like going throughout their life in Vietnam, and then there's the taking of the girl and the situation that happened on the hill, and then we kind of cut to the part after that. And there's almost two films. Then we have the situation and what's coming to it. I think it's a smarter choice to put that part of the film early on as opposed to a film like Sully, where they take the big scene, in Sully, which is the plane itself, and that is chippered throughout the film. We keep flashing back to it, whereas this, I think the most impactful part of this film is what happens after. That's where the most emotional resonance comes in, is because Erickson refuses to give up, even knowing that these guys are probably going to get off with what they did.
Right, yeah. I think the structure of how you tell the story is not as effective. Like he said, Sully, you see what we came to see right away, and then the after effects, and then the whole after effects of what the transpired in Casualties of War really emphasized this. Yeah, I think the afterwaves is what we came here to see, and him fighting I want to keep reporting this. You're going to ruin a lot of people. I don't care.
Yeah, there's that scene, I think his name is Dale Dye, I believe, and he was the trainer who worked on Platoon as well as Casualties of War. He plays, the white-haired head, I guess, that Michael J. Fox's character goes to speak to, and he goes, if you report this, you could ruin their lives. And especially looking at it now through the lens of like the Me Too movement and what's been in the last couple years, is that's often the argument against reporting the bad people, is you can ruin their lives. Not make no mention of the fact that they've already ruined some other people's lives. It's almost like you're making them into the victims. Yeah. And clearly these guys have had many chances to not be victims.
Right.
And to showcase if they're good or if they're bad, and they make the bad calls. Everyone in that group, with the exception of Erickson, slowly succumbs to a bad call, and they have to take ownership of it.
This is actually, I think, if I'm right, this is the first film featuring John C. Reilly.
It was, yes, his first. I know it's for a fact it was his first like speaking role. He was an extra originally.
Yeah, you can Google it. He's been extras and.
Yeah, so he was actually sent home because his extra scenes had been done, and it was 24-hour flight to get home to Chicago. When he got back to Chicago, he had gotten a message from De Palma saying, "No, I actually have a different role for you." Okay. Because they had let go of the previous actor who was playing that role a bit more cartoonish, he'd said. So he let that actor go. He called John C. Reilly and says, "I need you to come back and play a different character." John C. Reilly turned around that moment and flew 24 hours back to shoot the scene. He got off the plane and shot the scene where he's talking about Genghis Khan immediately. And so, like, that would be exhausting. Like, that's 2 days worth of flights, and then to get back and play an emotionally, like, difficult role like his, because he's another guy, too, where it's like, he doesn't initially think it's a good idea, but he's swayed much easier because of the power it gives him.
Right, yes. And I think that's I think Herbert, his character, is a much more fleshed out. Obviously, you need the loud, you need the Sean Penn thing.
Yeah.
But Herbert is actually the one who's the person that's fighting the consciousness of. He knows it's wrong, and he's trying to deflect it. I mean, when the rape is going on, he's like, "Gosh, I wish I had a beer." He's trying to divorce himself.
Yeah.
From whatever is transpiring.
Yeah, he's kind of pushing that angel on his shoulder out of the picture. Like he's
vocally
forcibly getting him out.
Right. Yeah.
And he's maybe too. Riley has a bit more of an accessibility, and we've seen it, of course, with his comedy work later on. But he's got a bit more of an accessibility in his role taking. You can find part of yourself in Riley in many films, and this is one where at the beginning you can find yourself in Riley as a character, like when they're just hanging out. You see him; he's a likable presence, and so seeing him make that turn and that decision that he makes to go along with it is really heartbreaking, because you do see like that he is a good person at the beginning of the film, and you see that he makes this choice.
And he knows he's going to condemn for this.
Yes. Whereas Sean Penn, like, even, there's something off about him at the beginning, even if he is, you know that this war has affected him from the very beginning of the movie.
Yeah, he's not going to recover.
Yeah. Whereas Riley, there is moments at the beginning where like he could make the right choice, and and as you watch the film, you see that he does not.
So overall, I think it's one of those hard things to sell to people. Hey, it's a great movie. What's the story about?
Yeah.
But I love the filming of it. It's actually marvelous. I mean, Stephen H. Byrne, who did Untouchables and a lot of other movies with De Palma that we critique. I like his camera choices. He does a lot of layering of wide scopes. And I wrote down in my notes, it's completely saturated. I think if you look at the film of it, it is the colorization, the whole texture, everything is immensely saturated.
Yeah, it's almost like you can see the color in Fox's sweat as he's like moving throughout the film.
There's sometimes where I'm like, are they on a movie set?
Yeah.
And like, no, they're on real location. Because I'm sometimes like, wow, is that a painted wall? No, that's actually the sky. So there's a lot of good choices, a lot of little snippets of scenes that are marvelous.
And talking about the cinematography and the visual look of the film, it's got a lot of, De Palma favorites. It's got some voyeurism.
Except for overhead.
It's almost overhead. You almost get that chance. There's at least a latrine shot. But that moment when he's going to the latrine, you get that voyeuristic follow. That's a creepy scene. That is one of the best stalker scenes I've ever seen.
He does those, yeah.
And then, of course, the forefront of, flying away in the helicopter. Fox is, like, sitting on that gurney, and, like, we see, like, everything dissolving behind him as they're flying away. It's really strong work. I even really liked this weird kind of, I think they call it the anthill shot, where they show the Viet Cong guy who's underneath the ground in the tunnels. Yeah. That's a weird scene. Like, it could have not worked very easily, because it could almost be cartoonish.
Right.
But it looks gorgeous.
Especially when you're on location and you got a certain amount of time and you're going to work that scene, right?
Yeah.
You make emphasis on working that out.
But what I appreciate is that De Palma was still interested in what his actors wanted. He had long conversations with Michael J. Fox about how Erickson was going to be perceived and what he could do to give that character layers. And they actually did rewrite and rework the scenes with the latrine and with the shovel scene that we see later on in the film that was reworked at Fox's suggestion, which I appreciate about a director who's working out of the country with a bunch of people, and everyone's exhausted. A lot of them got sick. Like, it's not an easy shoot. Like, it's not an easy shoot for the tone of the film or the environment of the film. And it certainly doesn't make it any easier to add more time to the film, you know?
And I like to bring it up because there's a lot of changes from what the script, David Rabe, who wrote the script, was displeased of what the film is. It was not anything, and there's some major changes to what the script was, and he completely disowned it. But David Rabe, he would go on to do other movies like with Sean Penn with his 1998 Hurly Burly and The Firm. So David Rabe loves these lot of content films, and he wrote his screenplays. I'm sure it's about 250 pages of script, so he's known for that. And I'm sure when you have a 250-page script for Casualty War, some things are just going to go.
Yeah, they just because the story needs to have a direction. It needs to have a focus. Because if you just gloss over some of the harder bits of this film, it doesn't do it a service to what happened and the knowledge that you should gain by watching it. Even though the film is again a fictionalized version of these accounts, but again, we talk about it. We've talked about it this month. De Palma didn't write the screenplay, but he worked off of the screenplay. Right. And I don't mind that he takes changes because he is a fantastic filmmaker. But like when you look at him taking someone else's written screenplay and working it as opposed to the ones he writes himself, right. Like I think he's better when he can adapt off of that as opposed to see his vision through the writing.
So yeah, it's a strong recommendation. Obviously, when people say give me your top 5 Brian De Palma films, this kind of does not even hit the top 5, even though it's an effective movie. It did not make its money back, so it's kind of considered a loss there, a fail there. But Michael J. Fox said it was a worthy movie to make. It was important to make, and I understand that.
I agree. Yeah, I agree with it. And when you said like top 5 De Palmas, that was a Twitter thing we'd done a little while ago.
Yeah, it was.
Someone asked us top 5 De Palmas. And I had forgotten about Casualties of War. Like I just completely, disowned the idea that it was a De Palma film because it's made with those De Palma-esque ideas, but it also feels like it's
own movie.
It's its own thing, and you don't think about it with reverence in the way that you think about.
He doesn't really emphasize his style. He doesn't really put his style into
it's there, but he's not really showing off. Yeah,
like in Clark Carlito's Way.
I think it deserves to be at least in the conversation of his best works. If only for the fact that he's able to maintain 2 hours of really difficult filmmaking.
Yes.
And show it off. And it's a great movie that you just can't always tell people to see.
And it's hard to digest because after you watch it, it stays with you for a couple days. Yeah.
One note I wanted to make before we end the episode too is if you get the chance, this isn't a film that has like multiple changes between its director's cut and theatrical, but I would advise if you have a choice to pick the director's cut of the film. It only includes 2 extra scenes, but the 2 scenes that are in the film's director's cut influence a lot more of the emotional beats that take place in the back half. Okay. If you don't have a choice, it doesn't really matter. But like the director's cut does add a couple of scenes that I think make that emotional resonance more important as the film comes to a close, especially with its framing device that we have with Michael J. Fox in the bus.
We frame our show just like how they interrogate the military court, right?
Oh, yeah, gosh. We don't even get time for that scene. Oh my gosh.
But if you want to know, this is just how we do it, right?
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So those are our thoughts on Casualties of War. We both think it's a great movie that's a very difficult recommendation. But I think if you're
not a Saturday night popcorn movie.
But if you're looking to expand upon your De Palma fandom or your Vietnam War film,
it needs to be the conversation.
I think it's in the conversation. It deserves to be up there, and people just don't talk about it because it's not that top tier, movie. You don't feel that at the end. You feel down, know? And so we definitely really enjoyed the film. We want to know what you think, though. So go ahead and give us comments down below, your thoughts on Casualties of War. Did you like the film? Did you not like the film? And even now that we finished off Brian De Palma month, what's your favorite De Palma film? Or maybe your least favorite. That's cool, too.
You know what? You could join the Patreon and tell us what De Palma film we can do next.
Because we've done, I think, 6 now total, including the ones before this month.
Yeah.
There's still a couple others. Like, we could definitely finish them. We're going to need a little bit of a break because he can get a little depressing at times. But definitely we'll revisit it if that's what you want. Go ahead and look at the patreon.com/KyleNickOnFilm. The link's down in the description, and you can help us decide our different themes, our different movies we're going to talk about. Also, please subscribe, comment, share the video, tell your friends about it. We love getting that conversation going with you, and we really appreciate getting down and dirty deep with the movie talk. Once again, I'm Kyle Goethe. You can find my film reviews at goatfilmreviews.com.
I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast. We're done with De Palma for a while.